Welcome to our second video in the DAW about music production. Today we will be seeing two new tools for your program. First, we're gonna see what is reverb and delay, and then I'll show you how to use an equalizer. Without much further to say, let's get started. Before entering the DAW, we have to think, what is reverb? Why is Carnegie Hall the Carnegie Hall and has better acoustic than your house? Why is that? Why do people prefer to record in an studio and not in any other place? That's because of the reverb. I know that's a bit confusing, but don't worry, we'll explain it. How do sounds work? Now you remember that from the video of properties of sound. But how does sound travel? That's another question. Completely different from knowing the properties of sound. So sound goes through the air. When the sound travels through the air, it bounces the walls or it bounces everything that is on the room. Meaning that every bounce it makes, it's gonna make your sound last longer. That is why when you are in a church, you actually hear too much sound. That is reverb. Let me show you an image. As you can see, sound goes anywhere it wants. You receive a sound via direct sound, but the audio is gonna have reflections. It starts bouncing on every material it's on a room. Let me put you an example. Now you're hearing my sound via a direct input, meaning I'm talking directly to my microphone, so you don't hear any reverb in it. Let me illustrate this more. I'm gonna use a very high reverb. So, this is me with reverb. This is reverb, the reflection that you are getting from my sound. In a room, you can choose the room and we are gonna see that, but don't try to run before you can walk. Be patient, I'm gonna show you how to do that. Now let's see the parts of a reverb. As you can see, we have a thing called pre-delay. This only means how much time measured in milliseconds or in musical figures it's gonna take the reverb to start. Works just like the attack in a compressor. Size means how big you want the room to be. Imagine being in a church. It's not the same being in a small church than being in a big one. Density is how much stuff is it gonna be on the room. This affects directly on the early reflections, because early reflections are gonna get absorbed by the density of the room. So I know I use early reflections and didn't explain you what it is, but it is the first reflection you get from our direct sound. Imagine it as if the sound only bounced one time in the wall, and you can imagine late reflection as if the sound bounces 4 or 5 or more times in the walls. This audio has a decay of 1 second. This audio has a decay of 2 seconds. This audio has a decay of 3 seconds. Do you see a little thing that says concert hall? Let's click on it. As you can see, we have emulations for different rooms, meaning that we can emulate any place we want. But this reverb only has this. You can buy much more plugins that has to do with reverb, emulating concerts such as Carnegie Hall, Hollywood Bowl, etc. Distance means where you putting the microphone in the room you decide to create. Let's look at the next image. Okay, so imagine we have 0% of distance in our room. That will mean that we have almost a direct sound, but we are actually capturing the room. And 100% of percentage in the distance means that the microphone is gonna be very far away from the direct sound, so it's gonna only get early reflections and late reflections. Last but not least, wet and dry. This is something found in almost every plugin. Wet means how much of the signal you want to be processed by the plugin, and dry is the dry signal that it's not affected by the plugin. Now that you actually know how to use reverb, let me show you how we actually use it in a normal day. Imagine we have 4 violins, everything connected through bus functionality. We are gonna work with a send. But what is a send? You are creating a new channel, and in that new channel you are gonna actually decide how much information you are going to send. That information is measured in decibels. It works almost as bus functionality. So, let's use bus 2 for example. As you can see, we can move the knob. That knob is how much information we're actually sending. If we move that knob up to 0, we are gonna receive the same information of input as the same information we are sending to the plugin, meaning that we are sending same information we receive as we recorded to send it to the plugin. But that is too much information for the plugin. As you can see, normally we use between 50% and below. That depends on you. You can actually make it sound like a big church or like a small church or as any place you want. The thing is that it has to make coherence. If you actually make a sound for kids and use a reverb very big in a big church, it's gonna sound like a horror movie. So only make coherence when you're actually using the plugin. Do you know what delay is? Well, delay means how many times the audio is gonna repeat itself before dying away. This will create an echo-like effect, but it is not an echo, it's a delayed audio signal that is repeating. Let's have an example. This is delay. It's an echo sound-like effect. But how do we use delay? It's actually more simpler than the reverb. Let's take a look in the DAW. As you can see, we have a thing called a note. This means how much time is it gonna take to the signal to repeat itself, or measured in musical figures. I'm gonna move the note of the delay so you can know the difference. Before actually testing the delay, let me explain what a feedback is. So the feedback is how many times, measured in percentage, it's gonna repeat itself. This measurement is so ambiguous but so clear when you hear it. Now let's go to the example. I'm gonna move, as well as I'm moving the note, I'm gonna move the feedback. Please pay pretty much attention to the knobs. 1/8, 1/8, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2. And you know what wet and dry means, so I don't have to explain that. Color means something that we're gonna see up ahead, and it's related to the equalizer. Now let's see how we will use these plugins in the real world. As I told you before, we need to create a send. And in this send is where we are gonna use the plugins. We aren't gonna use it directly on the audio. Normally, we don't use it directly on the audio because we can screw up pretty easily. And as I told you in previous videos, it's easier to work with an auxiliary output that will send the send. But let's hear the audio we are gonna edit.
Mama just killed a man.
Notice how we don't have any audio effect. We are gonna start putting them in the send auxiliary.
Mama.
I recommend you to experiment with this. Delay and reverb is a thing that you have to interiorize for yourself. You are gonna start to become an audio artist, so you need to experiment with the delay, with the reverb that you are gonna love for this song. Personally, I like it this way.
Mama just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled my trigger, now he's dead. Mama.
Well, that's it for reverb and delay. Now let's look, what is an equalizer? It's a thing that it's gonna let us control the spectrogram or the frequencies of a sound. Let's look at it in the DAW. As you can see here, we have the equalizer, and I'm gonna explain you the parts. So the first button I just click, it's called high pass filter. That's because it only lets high frequencies to pass it. The second band of the equalizer I just selected, it's gonna control all the frequencies that are low from the point we select and everything below that. The following four are just bands of the equalizer. They are gonna control the spectrum of only the place we select. Before the last one, we have another equalizer that is gonna control from the place we select up to all the high frequencies. And the last one is called low pass filter. That's because it's gonna eradicate all the high frequencies and it's gonna only let go through all the low frequencies. Now that we know that every band has a purpose, what do you think the three numbers below every band means? Well, the first number is telling you which part of the spectrum you are gonna edit. Second number means how much gain you are actually giving or taking away from your spectrum. Third number is the bandwidth. Bandwidth means how much are you gonna edit the spectrum from the surrender areas you are actually given. I would love to give you examples, but I would prefer to give you an exercise and see you on my workshop that it's gonna be on 25th of November. The exercise I'm going to give is grab any audio you have, set your bandwidth at 1.25, I repeat 1.25, and you can only set your gain to actually have 2 decibels more or 2 decibels less, no more than that. If you try to go hard on the equalizer, it is more probably that you're gonna screw up all your project than to actually make an improvement. For my part, this is all for today and see you on the next video.